good.
And we are live. Oh, I like your shirt.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's
Very
Melinda from Hope When There Was None. And I have a beautiful guest with me. Oh my gosh, this rock star warrior is going to be sharing her story and what she's doing now. So, Cheryl, I'm going to let you take it away. But before I do, I'm going to let everybody know I do have her links that'll be at the bottom here, but you can also find them in the comments. So, Cheryl, go ahead and take it away, hun.
Well, first of all, good morning, grace, peace, and blessings, and thanks for having me. Um,
Welcome.
I'm not sure how much of my story you want, but normally when I speak, I tell people the beginning, the middle, and the end. And so basically, in childhood, I was very spoiled, very kept, and didn't responsibility, didn't understand what love was, didn't understand what loving myself was or knowing my worth.
Mm.
My mom's side of the family took very good care of me. I was the first granddaughter and grandchild, so I never wanted for anything, and I never knew how to just be good to me. I always looked out for everyone. I was the oldest, and everything in the community, or either my family, they would come to me. As I got older, I started to work, I finished school, but I just never cared for myself. People would pick on me and bully me because I was very pretty and I didn't understand why. And I was so broken inside because even though my mom gave me everything, I never got hugs. She never told me she loved me. And so I struggled with low self esteem and persistent depression from teenage days. And I didn't know it because back then you couldn't diagnose, especially in the minority community. So I dealt with it. What I did was I always attracted men with money, and whether they were verbally or emotionally abusive, they took care of me and they filled the void of a dad and a mom, if you will. My dad was in the service, and then I didn't see him for a while. My stepfather raised me, but it was just very, very dysfunctional. My abuse began with me. I basically did whatever I had to do to have the image, the profile, the style, and wearing the mask because I was so hurt. I wanted my mom's love so bad. And because she was broken and bruised from her mom, I didn't understand why she had a problem with me till my grandmother cherished the ground I walked on. I was her first granddaughter, so the relationship that my mom wanted from her mother, I got. And the resentments and jealousy came from my mom to this day. People don't believe me because we always laugh it off. We always looked apart. But both of us were very broken coming up. And so as I got older, I would just go out with men that would take care of me. I would travel. I didn't care how they spoke to me. My thing was image. Let me make sure I looked apart so no one would know that I was hurting. I started using cocaine here in Connecticut when I was teaching school. So I left in 85. I went to Atlanta. And that's when the physical abuse started. I really believe it didn't start in Connecticut because my family and friends were here. So if anything happened, I would have someone to go to. But I met a gentleman in Atlanta. I was teaching, I was substitute teaching. I was working at a check cashing place. A friend of mine from Connecticut told me I could stay with him, so I found a place. But a good friend, and it's like a brother, he sexually assaulted me twice, so
Oh,
I packed up and went to a shelter, for help. In the meantime, I always worked. So I had two jobs, and I got a third job working in the ghetto, if you will. And I met a young man of the streets. He was very powerful, had a lot of money, had the flashy cars, and so that was my ticket. We started dating. I started working for him. He got me an apartment, and everything was good, but he was extremely physical abusive. I didn't
mm,
have any family or friends, so I took the abuse. I was afraid because he was very powerful, and he would beat me up and then make love to me, and I would sleep in the closet. I was just broken. I didn't understand why. How could I be so pretty and people didn't like me, or why they always picked on me, or someone always had something to say. But I held it all in, and I took the abuse because if he slapped me or punched me, I got a Louis Vuitton bag. I was able to go to Italy. I could shop, and I was just really sick. I didn't realize it, but I was really a sick young lady trying to survive the best way I could. It wasn't until he beat me and threw me out the car, started kicking me in my stomach like I was trash. And it was like a Ike and Tina Turner segment. Brought me in the house. He had me shower. I went to sleep. I got home. I mean, he got home, and I had all these gifts, and he, I love you, the flowers, and that's when I started to learn about the cycle. Again, afraid to say anything or call the police. I dealt with it for a while. It wasn't until the police were looking for him, actually a GBI, and they came to my place. They didn't. I didn't have any drugs or anything in there, but because I didn't say anything, they locked me up. I had, I had initially cashed some money orders for some friends of his. I didn't know they were stolen, so I had that charge as well. I went to jail for 2 weeks, and I think that's when I started to grow up and understand what domestic violence was all about. A chaplain literally saved my life in 1988 when she said, you know, a lot of women don't understand what love is. And it just hit a nerve with me, and all I could do was cry. You know, my parents, you know, they did the best they could with the material, but not hearing it and not getting a hug from the people you want, like my grandmother did it, but my mom didn't, and that was a big issue for me. Nevertheless, in jail, I grew up. I was no longer spoiled. No one knew me. I wasn't popular. I was an inmate. But at that time, I attended classes with the chaplain, and she started to allow me or teach us how to peel the layers, how to really deal with the inner soul, how to deal with your spirit, take it back to childhood. And so that's what I did. I was so broken. And I'm like, wow, I'm really messed up. So I continued on. They released me. And by the grace of God, one of the gentlemen that used to work for the guy, who's also a drug dealer, said, you know, they need teachers in St. Croix. That's where I'm from. You know, we were just good friends. Why don't you come with me? And I'm like, you know, let me just get my life together. So that was 1989. I went over to St. Croix, the Virgin Islands. I taught school in third grade at St. Dunstan's. I started out as a sub. But because all the stateside teachers had left the island, I had a really good chance of getting a full-time job, in which I did. Things were fine for the first 2 years. Me and this guy were just friends. No intimacy, nothing, just friends. He had his friends, I had mine. His sister allowed me to stay with her until the teacher's quarters was ready. And then we started dating for some reason. We just started hanging out, started having sex, and then he started getting jealous. The first time, you know, he slapped me around, you know, I would just fight him back, and then we would make up, you know, but then it got to be where the public humiliation and embarrassment came with the verbal. Again, I'm here on an island now, no friends, no family. But I said, let me just take this, let me do what I need to do, whatever he needs from me. And so my out was sex. You know, anytime he wanted to fight me, I would just, you know, really, really just try to be intimate with him to have him leave me alone because I didn't know anything else.
Right.
Things were good. Third grade class was wonderful. I had an apartment right across from the school, right near the water. You know, life was really good. He was showing some jealousy, but it wasn't physical as much as I had experienced prior to. One day I had early arrival in St. Croix, and the school St. Dunstan's, I'm sorry. And so that means that you go in an hour early, so there's no administrators or no one there. It's just like 3 or 4 teachers. We all rotated for our kids to come in early. He was across the street. Next thing I know, he's outside my classroom. Now, my classroom was surrounded with windows all on one side, so you could see people in and out. And he's just standing there watching me. So I'm talking to my 4 students, you know, we're just saying, did you do your homework? The usual conversation, you know, how was your day? How was your night yesterday? You know. And he just comes in and starts beating me up. Throws me on the floor and starts beating me up and says, you don't have time for me. Everything's about these effing kids. And I'm screaming like, get off me, get off me. My 4 students, I think it was 3 or 4 students. I remember Siobhan Rumney, Dwayne Dickerson, and the principal's son. I know his last name was Terrell.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Started throwing books and erasers at him, saying, leave Miss Gomes alone. And I'm sitting there. Now, prior to that, when I was in college, I lost a son at 5 months. And I was in the psych ward. I really snapped because I wanted to, be a mother. But I remember being on that floor being beaten. And I said, you know what? I couldn't save my son, but he's not going to hurt my students. And so I started fighting back. And my kids were throwing books and erasers. So one of the kids, Dwayne Dickerson, who I'm trying to find, went and got one of the upperclassmen that played basketball. They say it was Tim Duncan, the NBA player, because he attended school at that time with one of his classmates. But the young man came and pulled the guy off me, and I started fighting. He held him down, called the police. And the kids were fine. They didn't cry. They weren't traumatized. They just held me. And I know. And I said to myself, I don't care how long it takes. After this, I'm going to do a presentation for either Ellen, Tyler Perry, Oprah, or somebody to find my students so I can, acknowledge them. They were 8 and 9 years old. And they were so brave. They were braver than me. And so all said and done, they said that I could not come back to teach because I had risk of injury to minors. And it was a private school run by Hess. So the good thing is that prior to him, verbally abusing me, I started reading up on domestic violence, the cycles, the honeymoon phase, what have you. So they had an organization that literally saved my life, the Women's Coalition. I'm still in touch with them after 30 years. They nurtured me back to health. I had Clemma Lewis, who was an assistant director, Mary Mingus, who I'll never forget. And then I had a rehab counselor, Carol Scott, who has passed now, but she was like a mother to me. I actually called her my godmother, and she allowed me to come to her house. And she took me in, and she took care of me, but she let me have it. And she taught me about, knowing your worth. Being a black woman in America, you can't allow this. She didn't beat me up, but she let me have it in a sense out of love. And she nurtured me. And I'm like, wow, I'm really broken. So she, had me start from age 5. The sexual assaults, when I was assaulted by one of my mom's friends. And he didn't penetrate, but he sexually assaulted me enough where I told my mom, and she says, well, stop being grown. Or she didn't believe me, but I told my stepdad, and he beat the man up immediately. All I saw was blood and the police.
Oh my gosh.
So when I'm telling my godmother, Miss Scott, I don't like my mom. She buys me all the nice clothes. I had Louis Vuitton bags. I had the best of everything. But she never really embraced me as her daughter like I wanted, like she did my sister. And so I grew up with this resentment, and I don't know if finding these type of men was a way of getting back. They say it's a part of trying to get attention, but I wanted her love so bad that, I just did a lot that I shouldn't have, but I didn't know what else to do. When I went into rehab, because I started, doing cocaine again, we had a family therapy via telephone, because back then they didn't have what we have now. At 32 years old, my mom told me she loved me. And that was it for me. 32. I'm 65 now. So my therapist, Miss Scott, said, this is what you needed. And so my mom talked about, having tuberculosis, being outcast in her family, being her and my Aunt Claudine never involved in any activities with her siblings because, being Portuguese and West Indian, it's like, and then back then it was like having a plague. So, they weren't included a lot. They weren't loved as much. And so they grew up broken and bruised as well. And I guess it just carried on. So the love my mother didn't get from her mother, she didn't give to me. But her mother did. So, but moving forward, when I was in the Virgin Islands, I stayed 6 years. I survived 2 hurricanes. And I started working for the Women's Coalition. Then I worked at night as a hotline counselor because I wanted to let women know, we need to heal.
Yes.
We need to tell our stories. Black community women, we don't talk. We can't tell what happened. You don't want to be marked or embarrassed or ashamed. Right. So I stayed, Virgin Islands 6 years, Women's Coalition, doing work with them, doing the walks, doing whatever I had to do to grow and to continue to heal myself. I moved back to Connecticut in 2000, and I joined the church, Wayfaring Ministries, and I started a mentoring group. I'm a retired high school teacher, so I always worked with young women for years. I started the mentoring group because a lot of my girls were coming to me with all of this brokenness. whether it be with their mom, their dad, boyfriend, school, just society, just trying to grow as a young teenager. So I started my sister's innovative mentoring group, and I mentored girls up until age 25. I still have two of those girls to this day. They both 32. But
It's
I
awesome.
started to do the work again, but in Connecticut, I couldn't tell anybody what I was going through. I still held it in. Women's Coalition helped me, and everyone knew, oh, that's the teacher that got beaten up, but I couldn't come home and tell anyone because I was too ashamed. My family was very popular. Everybody knew me. So even now, people like, well, Cheryl, you went to jail? You were beaten? Oh, yeah. I just covered it up very well. But today, I tell women, know your worth, love yourself. Peel those layers off. We'll heal together. We are our sister's keeper, and so that's what I do. I started my sister circle 5 years ago because people kept asking me, Cheryl, you got to tell your story. I said, I'm not a speaker. I'll speak in front of the class, but I don't speak in front of people. But I didn't know the importance. I didn't know the need for all of us
Yes,
to
ma'am.
work with each other and help people. How many women are so broken and bruised out there? How many women that need us? How many women need to see an example? So I started the conference calls on Monday from 6 to 8, and now I'm doing Clubhouse on Thursdays from 6 to 8. I took a month off because I now run a shelter, and I really just wanted to regroup. But starting this Thursday, I'll resume my, services under my sister circle. I'm now an INC, awaiting my 501c, and so we do things in the community, hygiene products. I work at a group home, also a safe home for women. I do mentoring. I consult now. I go to group homes and I talk to women. I'm trying to get in the prisons now and talk to women so as they transition in the community, they'll be prepared with some tools. But it's just a lot of work, and the numbers are going up.
Yes.
Legislation and policy, things aren't changing fast enough for us. We just buried a 37-year-old here in Connecticut Thursday. Her boyfriend shot her in the back and killed her, and her kids jumped out the window for safety. And college educated and everything, but again, I tell women all the time, these men are broken and bruised as well. And they need some support as well. There's a lot of bruised young men out here. And the numbers for domestic violence continue to rise because no one's educating these men. So I'm proposing to go into prisons. And I want to speak to the men as well. I want, some other male groups to join me. So now I'm trying to collaborate with some friends of mine, my cousin, to get the message out because it's just sad and it's hurtful. But every day I pray and I get up and I say I have to keep, helping. I have a young lady now, 5 relationships, all abusive. She's only 30 years old. And she's in the shelter back and forth. Every time she meets someone that doesn't work, she runs and we rescue her. So we're trying to get her to heal, to know her worth and learn to love yourself. And knowing that if you're alone, it's okay. Learn to just love you. I date myself. I go to movies, I go shopping, I go to dinner now. I take trips to New York alone. I've been to several plays. And it's not as lonely as people think when you know who you are.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so it's important, and that's my message. Learn to love yourself and know your worth. I have our annual luncheon coming up in October, and it's Love Yourself brunch for women who are surviving domestic violence, mental health, or sexual assault.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Do you have a link for that? Maybe I could drop that down here later.
I will send it to you May 1st. We are going to be, putting a flyer up. I'm waiting for my event planner to register us for Eventbrite. But all the information, I post all the time. I'll make sure you get everything you need.
Oh, thank you. I just want to hug your little self. I just want to hug you.
I know, because I'm definitely a walking miracle.
Yes, ma'am, you are. Yes, definitely God's warrior.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. By His grace and mercy, that's why I'm here.
Yes. And if you're listening to the podcast and you hear sniffling, that's me. I'm just crying over you.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I didn't want to make you upset. I just wanted to tell my story so maybe it can help someone. Let them know they're not alone.
Well, listening to survivor stories remind me, just like you said, it reminds me I'm not alone. Hearing what you said about sex, and that's something that I did as a coping mechanism or defense mechanism. Anytime that there was a confrontation, maybe physical, I would drop to my knees or whatever I had to do
Whatever
in
you had to
order
do.
to de-escalate.
Absolutely, and that's the word, de-escalate. I would just sit in the closet, just cry, and he would just say, "You all right?" And it's fun. It's not funny, but to this day, the gentleman that abused me in the classroom, his family reaches out to me. He committed suicide. He committed suicide. He had another relationship after me, and the girl beat him up really bad. He's never experienced that before.
I shouldn't laugh, but
I know, but he never. And his mother said, and his sister, they asked me because they see me on social media and they respond, and they said, "I wish you would have told us." I said, "Well, I thought you all knew because a few times he beat me up at his sister's house. They just didn't get involved." Yeah, so the girl beat him up really bad and left him, and he wound up shooting himself in the head. So he was broken.
right,
And I'm saying to myself, can you imagine if it was the other way around? And he killed me or killed her, but he wound up killing himself.
right, right. And I'm glad you mentioned about these broken men. I do have men that do reach out from time to time that are actually victims of abuse,
Okay.
their partners being abusive too. But yes, we have that cycle where these men may become victims because they grew up in that toxic household as well.
Yeah, the gentleman that I had the first abuse with in Atlanta, when I got out of jail and I spoke with him, he says, "Are you leaving?" I said, "Yes." And I asked him, I said, "Why did you feel that I had to be?" He says, "Because I watched my dad beat my mom, and I thought that was what I was supposed to do." I said, "Yeah, but you could have killed me. And see, he gave me, he gave me money. He said, "I wish you the best." He did apologize, but he was just so broken himself, and I just had to go.
Well, let me ask you this then. Did you ever find forgiveness for any of these
Yes,
men?
yes, I
And
had
how
to.
was that
For
for
me,
you?
tough, because I'm like, no, no, no. But the more I didn't want to forgive, the more I couldn't heal or grow because I kept holding on to it.
Oh,
And my therapist, Carol Scott, I miss her terribly. She said, "Well, you're just going to be stuck." She said, "I want you to speak around the world, tell your story, but I want you to heal first and I want you to forgive. It's not for you, it's for them." Well, it's not for them, it's for you. I'm sorry. And I was like, "Really?" I didn't get, so I read up on it and how people, and I hear it all the time, you must forgive. I'm just forgiving my mother. She's a trigger for me, but I just said, "Lord, I have to forgive her."
well, I'm
She
glad
did
you're
the best
sharing
she
that
could.
because it's not like it's right away. This could be a matter of steps that you take that could take years.
I just spoke with my mom 2 weeks ago. And she says, "I don't know why you're so shut down." I says, "Because I don't want to be around the negative. You never have anything good to say. You're 85 years old, all your siblings are gone, and you're still here. I just wish you'd be a lot more happier." And she said, "Well, I'm doing the best I can, but sometimes I don't really care for you too well." I said, "I know you don't like me, Ma." I said, "But God said I have to love you. And let me go get your medicine. Let me go get what you need. You want to go eat?" That's tough for me. But I do it because God said I had to. Love your parents. Honor your mother and father. So thank God I had an aunt. Yeah, my mom's sister. That was like my second mother. I always, was with her most of the time in my life, opposed to my mom. I always wanted to stay at her house. I always wanted to be with her. Even when I got married, my mom didn't come. And when I was heavier, and I showed her my wedding picture, she says, "Oh, you look like a tent." I said, "Yeah, but I'm a beautiful tent. So I learned how to. She didn't like my husband at first. I mean, yeah, she really was resentful. And every now and then I still see it, but I can deal with it now. I can deal with it now. So I tell women all the time, just know your worth, know your triggers. Surround yourself with people that are, like-minded. And just stay away from the negativity.
Yes. Yes. And that could be hard for somebody. So what does that look like for that realization and healing?
Well, I
Just
go to
baby
I
steps.
go to church. I stay to myself a lot. I try to really, I've let like 3 or 4 women in my life go because they were toxic, or dating married men or doing things that I just don't approve of. I read a lot and I work. I retired, but I came out of retirement. Now I work at a safe house and I love it.
You sound very busy.
Yeah, I try. I mean, it's just me. I don't have any pets. I'm not married anymore. I'm not dating. It's just me. So I try to stay busy with things that I enjoy. And one thing I enjoy is working with my young women. I have an office, but it was a living room, but I made it out of an office so they can come in and I'm always there for them. And it's so rewarding because someone did it for me. And so I'm just giving back and being an example. The first time in my entire life I can say I absolutely love my job. I mean, I enjoy teaching. I enjoy working as a mental health clinician. I enjoy doing chaplaincy. But working at this safe house and watching these women grow and heal and nurture themselves back to life and just, I love it. I absolutely love it.
And you could tell you're just beaming.
Yeah, because I remember when it was me. And I always tell them, because the CEO says, well, you don't have to disclose. I says, yes, I do. I have to let them know. I used to live in a shelter just like this. I came in with the clothes on my back.
And that's important because when they see you, you're maybe smiling and you're put together. And I would have never guessed you are a survivor of so much.
My girlfriend, Michelle Turner, of 40 years, she just cried when she interviewed me. She has her own podcast as well. She said, Cheryl, I didn't know you were going through it. I said, I didn't want you to know. The cover up, you know how we cover up? Very well.
Right.
So I appreciate you having me, allowing me to tell my story. Hopefully I can get you on Clubhouse. I'm not at the podcast level yet. I'm still learning all this technology, but I just really appreciate women that just know their worth and tell their stories. It's needed. It's very needed. So
it is. It is. And I always said that if you just share even with your friend or a family member that might not know, it's so important.
Very important. We have to keep telling our stories. We have to heal together, and just know that we're not alone. That's my favorite slogan. You're never alone. So, you okay?
I'm okay. Sharing survivor stories is just it's very strong. It reminds me a lot of what I went through, and I have a lot of empathy. I'm very empathic, so it usually comes out when I'm on video. I always have tissue on hand because I don't think there's a lot of shows that I've done that I haven't cried.
Yeah, I cry all the time, especially for the young women. I just weep. Thursday I was a mess. Friday I was a mess. But you have to keep doing the work. Excuse me.
Yes, and thank you for all you do. And it is powerful. I just came on Tuesday. I went to our local shelter. I do go up there and share my story. And it's so powerful and such a reminder. It really rocks me back to those early days when I first left and I was that victim housed there. Yes, just a reminder. But it is very powerful when you start sharing.
And that's awesome, Melinda, because we have to stay reminded.
Yes.
Because I started dating someone, when I start seeing the cycles, I was like, okay, you know what, this is not going to work. And that had that constant reminder of, what happened. People say, oh, don't hold on to it. It's not holding on, it's like putting it on pause.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, that's what I say. I put it on pause in case, I see the same behavior in someone else. I'm just not going to put myself through this anymore. Traumatizing. This is one of the most traumatizing experiences I've ever had.
Draining.
It's draining emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, financially. It is.
Yes.
It is. It really is. So where are you located again?
I'm in Indiana.
Okay. I don't know why I said Canada. My cousin called me yesterday for the link, and she's like, is it Canada? I said, I think so.
It's the accent.
Do you do any conferences or workshops in Indiana for domestic violence?
I am trying to do my own retreat, if you want to call that. I'm trying to get that up and running.
Nice. Let me know.
Yes, I would.
I love retreats.
Well, thank you. This has been a pleasure. It's been beautiful, and you are most welcome.
Okay.
So if you're listening, if you're out there, this resonates with you, please share some love, share this video. There'll be the podcast link a little bit later, but find her links in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. And Cheryl, thanks again for being here.
Thank you. You take care and stay strong, stay encouraged, and love yourself.
Yes, amen.
All right. Bye bye.
Stay safe. Bye bye.
Mwah.